What's going on, guys? That was a scene from a short film that I'm currently in production for, and yes, I am the actor, the director, and I'm doing the cinematography for this project. But I was lucky enough to have my boy Lewis and Josh with me. Josh is the owner of this beautiful studio, Studio 20 Miami. If you guys are ever in need of a studio, definitely check them out. He was cool enough to allow us to shoot in his studio for the entire duration of this project. So huge shout out to you, Josh. Thanks, buddy. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about a lighting technique that I really feel like took my cinematography to the next level. And before we jump into the lighting breakdown of this scene and how I shot it, I want to first take a second to talk to you guys about probably the most important aspect of being a cinematographer or a director, and that is storytelling. Whenever you're approaching a scene from the perspective of a cinematographer, I think that it's incredibly important to light a scene with intention. You really have to ask yourself, what is the feeling that we're trying to deliver here? And how can the lighting play a role and kind of become its own character in that scene? I'm not going to go too deep into the story, but the overall idea of this particular scene is supposed to feel like some sort of hostage scenario. So I wanted it to feel like dark and kind of gritty. And if we're talking about inspiration, I find a ton of inspiration from the cinematography of David Fincher films. In my mind, you know, films like Fight Club and Seven are such a big inspiration to me in a lot of ways because I just love visually how they're able to tell that story. So keeping that in mind, there's a couple of things that I really wanted to accomplish with the lighting. And you know, like I said, I wanted it to feel dark and I wanted it to create a lot of contrast, but I wanted there to be enough light on my face so that way you can actually make out my facial expressions and kind of feel what I'm feeling in the scene. So the first light that I started with was this Moelis B500, and I set this up on an aperture light dome set to 2700 Kelvin with a honeycomb grid, and I just rigged that right overhead just to give this top-down lighting. Now, I'm not sure how Zhayun managed to get such a powerful light in such a small package. I mean, we're talking about 500 watts packed in like a really small, tiny little package. And to me, that was the biggest takeaway of this light. Now, to be completely honest with you guys, Zhayun did send me out this light to do a review on this. And there's some things that I think is really great about this light, but there are some things that I really don't like about this light. And I'm going to break down all of that stuff in the next couple of days. But I also asked them if we can do a giveaway. So we are doing a giveaway of this particular light. All you got to do is stay to the end of the video and I'll tell you guys how to do that. Okay, so this is what it looks like with this light turned on. As you guys can see, it's acting as the main key light in the scene, causing some shadows just below my eyes and on this part of my body. And to be honest with you guys, as crazy as it sounds, this is already looking pretty good. I mean, you could actually just leave this one light on and kind of leave everything else pretty dark. I mean, you might want to bring up the exposure just a little bit in the background just so you're properly exposed. But to be honest with you, this is a look. Now, top-down lighting for me has become one of my favorite lighting techniques for many reasons. Number one, the light is very controllable because you're shooting right down and you're not having it spill anywhere else on the background or on the sides, especially if you put a honeycomb grid on it. You really have complete control of this light. And being able to have full control of your light and not having it spill all over the place is extremely important, and it's something that I'm going to dive into in just a second. But the other thing that I really like is that it creates really awesome contrasting shadows on this part of my face and this part of my body, which automatically kind of sets the tone for that kind of gritty look that we're going for. Now, the next light that we added in this scene was an aperture 120D on a light dome with some blue colored gels just to give it a cooler color in the background. This is what it looks like with this light turned on. Now, this light does two things. Number one, it brings up the exposure levels so we're properly exposed in our scene and we have all the information that we need to be able to take this back and actually color grade the image. But the other thing that it does is it gives contrasting color between the warm key light and the cool background tone. Now we are adding a little bit more color contrast and depth to the shot. Now, one thing that I will say that it's very important to note here is that early on in my career, I didn't take into consideration that if you want to shoot dark and moody cinematography, you have to be able to properly expose your shot. Even if the shot looks a little bit bright in your scene, there's a lot that you can do in post-production to bring down those shadows. So the last thing that you want to do is shoot something and not have all the information. If something is completely black, having that lack of information will actually cause you to have a worse looking image. So the best thing that you could do is make sure that you bring up the overall exposure levels in your scene by making sure that there's nothing that's in complete darkness. And of course, if you guys want to learn more about exposure and ISO, click on this link right up here and I do a complete breakdown of what ISO really is and how to properly expose your image. The next light that we added was an aperture infinity bar, and this was just a background practical light, lighting up that back wall, but also shedding a little bit of light on the staircase right over here. This is what it looks like with this light turned on. And because you can connect the aperture infinity bar to Sidus Link, I could color match exactly the color tone that's coming out of my Aperture 120D. And I'm sure that if you guys follow this channel, heard about me talk about this infinity bar many times, but there's a good reason for it, because this thing is freaking awesome. And I literally use it on every single one of my shoots because it's so handy and it's just so practical. Like, I took it, I attached it to the staircase because it's metal, and I just shifted the color and matched it right to whatever it was on the back wall already. And it was just so easy to be able to add just a little bit more visual interest to the scene. I strongly recommend it. And if you guys want a discount code to Aperture, I have one down below. So check that out. Now, so far we're looking pretty good, but the absolute cherry on top was adding one more practical light, and that was an Aperture B7C light bulb that we put in this dingy lampshade to act as a practical light in the frame. What this does is give motivation for all of this warm light coming down on top of me. In your mind, as a viewer, you're thinking that all of that light is actually coming from this B7C light bulb, when in fact it's coming from our very first key light that we added, which was the Mola's B500. This is what it looks like with this light turned on. You know, this is something called motivated lighting, and motivated lighting is so important. The Aperture infinity bar is giving the motivation to the back wall, making sure that we're properly exposed, but in your mind, again, there's a reason for that cool light in the background. You think that it's all coming from that Aperture infinity bar, when in fact it's coming from multiple sources. Then again, we have the, little light bulb that's swinging back and forth in the frame. You think that all of that light is coming from that, when in fact it's coming from our key light. But the other thing about this light is that it's not only acting as a practical and giving some sort of motivation, but it's also adding just a little bit more exposure on my face, which solves the very first thing that we wanted. And our intention was to be able to see as much as my face as possible, because we wanted to see the facial expressions. We wanted to see the blood on my face and everything like that. So this light really helped accomplish that. Now, some other things to note here, that in this particular scene, originally it was just a blank background with just this wall. And we wanted to give it a little bit more character. So what we did was we brought in that metal staircase. That was already something that was in the studio. That was something that, Josh uses to be able to move around and get things rigged up on a studio. So I said to myself, you know what? We want this to look like a basement or like a warehouse, and we want it to kind of feel dirty and grimy, and like, it feels like somebody's working in there or something like that. So by adding this staircase, it gives a little bit of character to the background. The other thing that we did was we added these pieces of wood plank and the ladder on the right side of the frame. And again, it's just adding to the overall image and the vibe. And if you take a look at this, you'll never guess that this is shot in a big, beautiful studio warehouse with no sets involved. It's really important to note that, like, dressing up a scene and having some sort of production design definitely adds to the overall flavor of this scene. If we just had this shot on a blank wall, don't get me wrong, I think we could pull it off, but it wouldn't give the full effect that we were looking to do. And like I said in the beginning of this video, guys, the most important key factor here is really storytelling. It's important to go into a scene with some sort of intention and an idea of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And the stronger the vision, the more it's going to come out in the frame, the more, you're going to be prepared to shoot something and deliver that vision and have a stronger creative direction. It's only going to help you guys. So I personally suggest you spend a lot of time thinking about the shots and a lot of time thinking about what it is that you're trying to accomplish in pre-production before you even step on set. And I promise you guys, that's going to help you a lot in accomplishing and executing that vision. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of top-down lighting. I know a lot of people think that it sucks the life out of a character, or whatever they say on YouTube, but to be honest with you guys, top-down lighting is used over and over again in Hollywood films and TV shows. And if you really pay attention to it, it's probably used more than you think. Now, let me tell you guys how you can win one of these for free. All you guys got to do is go to my Instagram, follow me on Instagram, and comment down below in this YouTube video, Mola's B500, and you could win one of these lights. Of course, I want to thank you guys so much for stopping in and hanging out. I should be releasing this short film pretty soon, and I would really appreciate it if you guys watched it and put in a lot of effort into it. And like I said in the beginning of this video, not only am I going to break down the lighting portion of this, but I'm going to break down every single aspect of this filmmaking production. Thank you so much for stopping in and hanging out. I'll see you guys next week. Deuces.